We have some major breaking news to discuss today. The Chicago Blackhawks investigation into the sexual assault allegations is over. The report has been released. Many changes are coming, including Stan Bowman out as GM. We'll go into more details and discuss the results coming up next. Welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. As I mentioned, we have some major developments today in the Chicago Blackhawks investigation into the allegations of sexual assault taking place back in 2010 from a former player against a former video coach for the Blackhawks organization. This has been ongoing now for quite some time. I think a lot of the great reports initiated by TSN's Rick Westhead and Katie Strang of The Athletic certainly spawned a lot of this, and their great investigative journalism certainly led to getting a lot of good results here, and I think played a critical role in all of this. But obviously the law firm Jenner and Block and attorney Reed Schnarr outlined all of the results here just not too long ago in the last hour. There will be a link down in the pinned comment. If you want to read their full report, you can certainly go ahead. But I will caution you though, if you do want to read the report, there is a lot of graphic detail, so be forewarned ahead of time. Now, we learned today that the victim in all this, which will remain anonymous and isn't one of the big important details here, was one of their Black Aces from the 2010 Stanley Cup run. Other details that we learned, which were already some of it was already out there as part of the investigation, or that was kind of alleged. Basically, we learned that there was a big meeting late in the 2010 playoffs, right before the Stanley Cup final. That meeting involved John McDonough, who was the senior president of hockey operations. It involved Al McIsaac, the senior VP. It involved GM Stan Bowman. It involved Jay Blunk. It involved James Gary. And it also involved Kevin Chevaldayoff, current GM of the Winnipeg Jets, and head coach of the Florida Panthers, Joel Quennville. Now, at that meeting, they discussed the allegations and chose to not do anything about it. They decided to wait and put it off until after the playoffs. It wasn't until after the Stanley Cup parade, I believe it was 5 days later, that the human resources side of the organization was first kind of informed of anything. Later, the video coach, Allred, was given the option of resigning or facing an investigation. So clearly, that was not the right way of going about things. They put the game and they put the playoffs ahead of people, which is completely wrong. They have been fined $2 million by the NHL as well as due to this report, indicating that this is basically for inadequate procedures and handling of this whole situation. Stan Bowman, the GM of the Blackhawks, is out. He has stepped aside, according to the Blackhawks. So basically, they've allowed him to resign. Senior Vice President Al McIsaac is out of the organization. They also announced that they don't want anybody from that 2010 senior management group to be a part of the organization any longer, and that comes right from ownership. The Blackhawks have made it clear that nobody from the 2010 team that was working in their senior management staff is basically welcome in the organization any longer. So they're basically going with a clean slate. Kyle Davidson will be the interim general manager for right now, and they're basically going to reassess everything here and kind of start fresh with a whole new management team, which I think is ultimately the right thing to do at this point. I mean, this was a major issue. That player who brought major concerns deserve better. And these senior management people are ultimately paying the price here. Now, we also learned a lot more details here, which I'll go into gradually. One, we learned that they interviewed 139 different witnesses, including 21 players and 5 out of 9 players that were considered the Black Aces for the Blackhawks during that 2010 Stanley Cup run. And like I said, one of those Black Aces was the actual victim here. His identity will remain anonymous though, and that's certainly not a major part of this. It doesn't really matter who it happened to. The fact that it happened at all is absolutely disgusting, and it's nice to see something being done with it. To be completely honest, I had concerns that this investigation wasn't going to be really handled properly, but the law firm essentially was able to do this with full cooperation from the Blackhawks and the Wirtz family, and they did the right thing here. So I'm quite happy with how everything went and what happened here. And just obviously a lot of people said they were worried that you can't really investigate yourself, right? At the same time though, they did the right thing. We also learned that the situation that was being addressed as sexual assault essentially between the player and Allred, the video coach. Basically, it was deemed to be non-consensual by the player, and Allred tried to play it off like it was consensual. We also learned that not long after this, that there was also another incident as well involving this same video coach harassing, I guess you could say, or I guess it falls under sexual assault, like inappropriate touching with a 22-year-old Chicago Blackhawks interim as well. So this wasn't even the only incident, but this guy's clearly, I don't really have any doubts based on what we've seen and heard that he very, very likely is guilty here. He went on to assault other people afterwards. Other people ended up going through abusive situations because of this guy not being stopped, because the police were never notified. And that is the worst of all. I mean, it's bad enough to see anybody go through anything like this, but when you can't even put a stop to it, when you're not protected by those around you, it's a major disservice. It's appalling what this person had to go through. So this leads to significant changes in Chicago. Now, of course, we know the Blackhawks already were off to a terrible start, and to be completely honest, in my opinion, I think Stan Bowman deserved to be let go strictly based on his job performance, even if he wasn't guilty of anything to do with this investigation. I think he did a poor job on the offseason assembling this team. They've shown it on the ice, and they need change at that level as well. And hopefully we'll see some changes to get some things going here, because this team certainly deserves to provide a better product here to their fan base. But a couple other things that came out of this. So like some other guys like Quennville and Chevaldayoff, like this investigation to me, like the fallout from it is not over. These two guys are still in prominent roles in the NHL. Gary Bettman has indicated via statement that he plans to have individual meetings with them to discuss the reports here. So ultimately, one of the big things that probably set off the investigators was they said that the management team, when they were all interviewed separately, like all the stories were extremely different. They all had a kind of a different account of what happened. Chevaldayoff and Quennville were both interviewed and asked about the situation earlier in the offseason. They both made statements indicating that it was the first they had heard of it and that they weren't aware of anything, which was complete lies. These two guys are in prominent roles, and they did know because they were a part of this meeting, and they did not come forward. Now, obviously, they were interviewed privately, and they had a different story to tell. So ultimately, they probably, like Bowman, are indicating that their senior bosses were the ones most responsible. Like if you look at the statement here, and I'll show you from Stan Bowman, he basically admits that he made a mistake, but he was relying on his superior to do the right thing. So it's kind of passing the buck, in my opinion. Like to me, if you're an innocent bystander and you don't do anything when you know something is not being done, like they would all be aware if the police were notified or what the things were at when it comes to that kind of thing. Try to push for change and do more. Like you're just as guilty if you did nothing to stop it, in my opinion. So I'm very, very curious to see what this is going to mean. I am sure Winnipeg Jets ownership are probably going to be having conversations with Chevaldayoff. I'm sure the Panthers organization is probably going to be having conversations with Quennville. Gary Bettman will be having conversations with both of these guys as well. And we'll see what happens. I mean, Chevaldayoff has been the Jets GM as long as they've returned to Winnipeg. Prominent role, normally a very well-respected hockey man. So this is certainly going to have a big impact on him. Obviously, that changes a lot, I'm sure, what people are going to think. Joel Quennville is regarded as one of the greatest coaches of all time. I'm sure that's going to tarnish his reputation as well and will have an impact. So we'll see what comes from this. And if there's any additional discipline, will they remain in their roles? We don't really know at this point, but the story here is not over. It is only beginning, but at least there is some form of justice here with some people having consequences in their inability to help this player who was, a victim of abuse by a member of their own organization. So we'll see where this goes. So let me know what your thoughts are on the outcome. Have a look at the report if you wish. It's linked down below. And let's talk about this and see what everybody thinks. But ultimately, there was a lot of things that happened behind closed doors that nobody knew about that were just absolutely appalling. And at least now we know the results. We know the report. There are consequences, and the Blackhawks organization will attempt to move on from this and try to create a whole new, better reputation for themselves. That's certainly going to leave a big stain on their reputation of the organization. They're one of the oldest teams in hockey. Normally a well-respected organization. They've had their issues in the past, of course, but this is a big one. And they're going to attempt to start on a clean slate, move forward, get a new management team in there, and certainly do better by their players moving forward, because everybody involved deserves better. So let me know what your thoughts are down in the comments. We'll discuss further. If you're new to this channel, make sure you subscribe and stick around. We'll keep you up to date with all the latest news, rumors, and analysis on all 32 NHL teams. Thank you for watching, and I will catch you next time.